Board of Trustees of the Lebanon Community School Corporation. This meeting is a meeting in public for the purpose of conducting the school corporation business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. The meeting site is fully accessible. Any person requiring further accommodation should contact the superintendent at the school corporation central office. As is our custom, we begin our time with a prayer. Mrs. Hutchison.
Dear God, continue to grant us the wisdom and courage to make the best decisions for our students and our families and our communities. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. I will now call our meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hendricks, would you mind leading that, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is roll call. Everyone is present, so we do have a quorum. Mission statement, Mr. Parks.
Lebanon Community School Corporation will cultivate and reach every student by influencing and enriching their lives through the power of education, and to do so in a positive and safe learning environment.
Thank you. Item 2, comments from the public. Mrs. Beltran, no one signed in? Okay, no one has signed in to speak, so we will move on past that item. Before we move on to the next item, I would just like to provide the public the school board's acknowledgement that we did receive a letter of resignation for Mr. Brian J. Boyer, teacher at Lebanon High School, on Tuesday, January 26th. In order to accept this letter, a motion from a member of the board is required, and right now would be the time to offer that motion if anyone on the board would like to do so. Okay, seeing that no motion is offered, we'll proceed to the next agenda item. Recommendation for cancellation of teacher contract. Dr. Milliman.
Thank you, Mrs. Keith. On January 15th, 2021, Mr. Brian J. Boyer, teacher at Lebanon High School, was placed on administrative leave pending investigation of misconduct. I provided extensive documentation in your background notes for today of information gathered from that investigation and leading to today's formal recommendation. Indiana statute requires several specific steps that must be followed when a recommendation for cancellation of a teacher contract is initiated, including notification timelines and timelines for parties to respond to those notifications. Additionally, a preliminary recommendation for cancellation of a teacher's contract must be made by the teacher's principal, and after the required timelines are met, be made formal by the principal and the superintendent. I believe it's also important to point out today that Indiana law requires a notice of public meetings of the school board to be posted for a minimum amount of time prior to those meetings. Following all of these required timelines and to meet today is the soonest that this board was able to convene to consider this recommendation. At this time, I'll call on Mr. Kevin O'Rourke, principal of Lebanon High School, to come forward before the board and present the recommendation.
Good afternoon. On January 15th, 2021, Mr. Boyer solicited an underage female to join him on the premises of Lebanon High School for a sexual encounter. Mr. Boyer also made it possible for the underage female to gain access to the school through a door at the back entrance of the building, contrary to school policy. Mr. Boyer has since admitted to school and law enforcement officials that he engaged in this misconduct. Furthermore, on January 19th, Mr. Boyer, while at the Boone County Jail, was served a notice that I recommended that his contracts with the Lebanon schools be canceled effective immediately. Mr. Boyer did not request a conference with the superintendent in connection with this termination. Recommendation. The law allows him 5 days following receipt of the notice to make that request, and that time has expired. It is my recommendation that Mr. Boyer's teaching and extracurricular contracts be canceled on the grounds of immorality, neglect of duty, and other good or just cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you. Board, I'd like to ask for a motion to vote on Mr. O'Rourke's recommendation for cancellation of teacher contracts for Mr. Boyer. That would be teaching as well as extracurricular.
I'll motion.
Thank you. A second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments, questions, discussion on the item before we vote?
I just would like to commend Dr. Millman and the administration for such a speedy response. If you look at the timeline, I mean, many things were done expediently as soon as they were aware, and I would like to thank you for that response and for ensuring that our students were safe and letting parents know what was going on when it was appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I would second that as well. I think everyone involved in the school staff, our legal counsel, Mr. Franson, who isn't here today, but acted very professionally, very swiftly to bring this matter to a conclusion. So thank you for all that you've done. We do appreciate it.
I don't know if I can third, but yes, the whole situation saddens me, but it makes me proud to see the reaction of the administration and the employees so swift and professionally handling themselves throughout this whole situation.
And I also would like to thank Mrs. Springer for stepping in to fill that gap. I know there were a lot of upset band students, and she knows most of our students, and I think that was a great fit to ask her to come back and do that.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, we will vote on the motion on the table. We are going to do a roll call vote for clarity on the issue. I will start with you, Mrs. Hutchison. Yes would be in favor of cancellation of the teacher contract.
Yes.
Mr. Parks?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Dr. Millman, did you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay. All right. We will be back here on February 16th for our next regularly scheduled meeting at 7 p.m. We are adjourned.